I still remember the day my mother's life changed, and with it, the life of everyone who loved her. She called me just after lunchtime, voice trembling, half laughing, half crying, as though she'd seen something holy. "Anna, you're not going to believe this. I won. I actually won," she said. And I laughed, thinking it was a joke, maybe one of those scratch-off tickets she liked to play after grocery shopping. But she kept talking, her voice rising and falling like a storm. $5 million, Anna! 5 million! Do you know what that means? We'll never have to worry again. At that time, my husband Ethan and I lived in a small cream-colored house next door to hers. We were ordinary people, working 9 to 5, paying off the mortgage, making weekend pancakes, borrowing sugar and garden tools back and forth across the fence. Mom lived with her husband, George, my stepfather, a quiet man with a soft face who built birdhouses in the shed and liked to hum old country songs while fixing things. We were close, all of us. The kind of family who checked on each other every day, who celebrated birthdays together, who lent a hand without asking. Ours was a simple life, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but leaves warm footprints on the heart. When Mom won that money, we were genuinely happy for her. I remember Ethan hugging her and saying, "Linda, you deserve this. You've worked hard all your life. Now you can finally rest." And she cried, clutching the ticket, whispering thank yous to the ceiling, to the universe, to anyone who would listen. The first few weeks were a blur of joy. She treated us to dinner, bought George a new set of tools, told me she'd help us replace the roof that had been leaking since spring. She kept repeating, "This changes everything." But back then, I thought she meant in a good way. I had no idea how right she was. It began with small changes. A new coat, more expensive than her car. Then a diamond bracelet, a silk scarf, shoes that gleamed like they belonged in a museum. I told myself it was fine. She was finally enjoying life. But then she bought a convertible. A red one. Mom didn't even know how to drive stick. Yet there it was in her driveway, shining like temptation itself. Not long after, she hired a landscaping company to tear out her garden. The garden she had tended lovingly for years. Rows of roses, daisies, and tulips, all gone in a single afternoon. In their place, she put a stone fountain, imported from Italy, surrounded by marble tiles and glowing garden lights. It looked elegant, yes, but cold. Lifeless. When I asked her why, she just smiled and said, "You have to look the part, Anna. You wouldn't understand." She started wearing perfume so strong it lingered on your clothes long after a hug. Her hair, once streaked with honest gray, turned into a sleek golden blonde. And her laughter, the laughter that used to be full and warm, began to sound forced, brittle, like the clinking of empty glasses. At first, she still invited us over. We'd sit at her new dining table, polished oak, heavy and oversized for 3 people, and she'd talk about things she'd never cared for before. Luxury brands, stocks, vacations, exclusive clubs. The conversation that used to be about recipes and neighbors and the price of milk was now a series of names, labels, and numbers. She talked, but not to us. To herself, to her reflection in the shine of her wine glass. Then the parties began. They started small, a few new friends, loud laughter, expensive wine, but soon it became something else entirely. Every weekend, our quiet street filled with luxury cars and unfamiliar faces. I'd look out the window late at night and see her yard glowing with lights, bodies moving to music I'd never heard before, a blur of sequins, silk, and shadows. One night, I woke to voices and peeked out from behind the curtains. What I saw made my chest tighten. People in masks, silver and gold, feathers and jewels, danced around the fountain. A man in a tuxedo popped champagne onto the lawn while my My mother stood in the center holding her glass high like a queen at a masquerade. The next morning, I went over, heart pounding, trying to make sense of it all. Mom, what was that last night? She laughed softly, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve. Just friends, darling. You wouldn't know them. They're investors, people who understand success. You'll see, I'm finally living. Her eyes gleamed, but there was something else there. Something restless, almost fearful. It was around that time George began to fade into the background. He used to wave when we passed by, stop for a chat, ask Ethan about the car. But lately, he just nodded, quiet, avoiding my gaze. His shoulders hunched each day more. His smile disappeared. Sometimes at night, I'd see him sitting alone on their porch, staring at the dark, cigarette glowing like a signal flare. Then one afternoon, there was a knock on our door. George stood there, pale and trembling. "Can I come in?" he asked. We sat him down, poured coffee. His hand shook as he lifted the cup. "Anna, you need to know what's happening. Your mother, she's not just spending money. She's being used." He explained that after the win, she'd been approached by a group of so-called advisors, well-dressed, charming, promising to help her invest. They'd introduced her to a circle of business partners, people with big smiles and empty eyes. "They talk about opportunities," George whispered, "but it's lies. They're pulling her into something illegal. I've seen the documents. Offshore accounts, shell companies. She doesn't even understand half of what she's signing." I felt cold all over. I asked if you'd told her. He nodded miserably. "She won't listen. Says I'm jealous, small-minded. She thinks they're her friends." He looked down, his voice breaking. "She doesn't trust me anymore. Or you. They filled her head with poison." A week later, I tried to talk to her myself. I waited until one of their advisors, a tall man in a tailored suit, drove away in a sleek black car. Then I went next door. She was in the kitchen, arranging a bouquet of white lilies in a vase that looked more expensive than our couch. "Mom," I began, "George told me some things about the people you've been meeting with. Are you sure they're legitimate?" "Oh, so he's been running his mouth, has he?" "I knew it. You two can't stand it. You can't stand that I finally have something." "Mom, that's not it," I said softly. "We're worried about you. We love you. You don't need these people. We have us." She set the vase down so hard it cracked. "I don't need anyone, especially not pity from people who have never achieved anything." Her voice rose, echoing off the marble countertops. "You're jealous, Anna? Admit it!" I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I'd give anything to have the old her back, the one who hummed while cooking, who wore gardening gloves instead of diamonds. But she turned away, and I knew I'd lost her. After that day, she stopped calling, stopped answering the door. If I passed her on the street, she barely nodded. Ethan said we should let it go, but I couldn't. I kept watching. At night, the lights in her house burned until morning. Strange cars came and went, engines rumbling like thunder. Sometimes I saw her outside, pacing the driveway, phone pressed to her ear, her face tight, angry. Once, Ethan followed one of the cars. It led him to an old warehouse near the edge of town. He came home shaken. "Anna," he said, voice low, "I don't think this is just bad business. I think she's in danger." And then, one gray morning, it happened. Sirens, flashing lights, black SUVs surrounding her house. Agents with badges swarmed the lawn, voices sharp, urgent. Our neighborhood, once quiet and ordinary, looked like a crime scene from the evening news. We stood on our porch watching helplessly. One of the agents carried out boxes, files, laptops, jewelry. Reporters showed up. Cameras clicked. By nightfall, the story broke. A major fraud ring dismantled, millions laundered through unsuspecting investors. Among them, Linda Parker, local lottery winner. By the time I saw her again, the house was stripped bare. The fountain had stopped running. The garden lights were dark. She sat on the front steps in her fur coat, no makeup, no mask, her hands clasped like a child's. When she looked up at me, her eyes were empty. She whispered, "They took everything, Anna. Everything." I wanted to tell her it wasn't the money they took, that she'd given that away herself, piece by piece. Each time she traded kindness for pride, love for luxury, truth for illusion. But I said nothing. I just sat beside her, and we watched the wind scatter leaves across the marble tiles. She moved away a month later. George went with her, though I doubt they spoke much. The house next door was sold, then sold again, and now it stands empty. Shutters hanging, weeds crawling through cracks, the fountain filled with rainwater and rot. Sometimes on quiet nights, I walk past it. I can still see flashes of what used to be. My mother kneeling in her garden, hands buried in soil, humming softly to the flowers. That woman is gone now. The one who replaced her vanished too, swallowed by greed and loneliness. People say money changes you, but it doesn't. It simply hands you a mirror, one you can't look away from. My mother didn't become someone else when she won. She became what had always been hidden, the hunger, the fear, the need to be seen. And in chasing everything she thought she wanted, she lost the only things that mattered: the laughter from the porch, the warmth of a family dinner, the quiet peace of a life well loved. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: fortune doesn't make you rich. Love does. And when love is gone, $5 million can't buy it back.